Hi, and welcome to Cyberism's Malicious Life. I'm Ran Levy. If you wish to get a sense of how unusual Thotcon is among the other cybersecurity conferences out there, you should probably start by visiting their website, thotcon.org. It's designed to look like a plain old terminal, black and white only, naturally. It's partly written in Russian and Chinese, and under the heading of location, it says top secret. So yeah, Thotcon is pretty unusual. In a previous Malicious Life B-side episode, we had Jack Daniel from the B-Sides conference, and in this episode, we're continuing our tour of the most notable cybersecurity conferences with Chicago's Thotcon, spelled Thotcon, which celebrates its 11th anniversary this year. How did Thotcon come to be? What makes it unique among the other conferences? And what does it have to do with my favorite movie of all time, The Matrix? Eliad Kimchi, our producer, spoke with Nick Percoco and Jonathan Tomek, two of Thotcon's founders. Enjoy the episode.
All right, today we're talking to Nick Percoco, aka C75, and Jonathan Tomek, aka Sake Bomb. And we're here to talk about Thotcon. For those of you listening, living in the Chicago area, you probably recognize Thotcon as one of the biggest and oldest hacker cons in that area. It has a unique vibe and feel to it, and it draws thousands of people every year. So, Nick, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Before we dive into Thotcon, can you guys tell us a little bit about yourself in a few words? Nick, you can go first.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Nick Percoco. My day jobs have been in the security industry for coming up maybe on 25 years. Today, I'm the chief security officer at a cryptocurrency exchange known as Kraken. And I run security and engineering there.
And I'm Jonathan Tomek. I'm probably Nick's second-hand guy when it comes to a lot of random things. When it comes to swag and admission, the games, the CTF, things like that. So together we kind of make a pretty good team there.
Yeah.
And my personal stuff. So I started my company called MadX, and I've been doing a lot of cyber threat analysis and cyber to physical discovery of IoT devices.
Where did it all begin for you guys? Why even start a conference?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about that. I think going back, if you roll back the clock even 13, 14 years ago, I personally was in a place where I was speaking at lots of hacker conferences and security conferences, all over the place, not even only in the United States, but all over the world. And I think coming back from DEF CON, I don't even remember which DEF CON this would have been, but it would have been a DEF CON, I think in 2009. I remember I was on a plane and thought, why is there not a hacker conference in Chicago? And there have been some conferences that have started and stopped over the years. I think there was one called Chicago Con possibly that existed for a little bit. And then there was just small little pockets of things, but nothing at the scale, or even just not even really scale, just nothing up sort of the spirit that I think we wanted, or I wanted, at the beginning, thinking about what Thotcon could be, or a conference like Thotcon could be. And the whole idea was to be very non-commercial, not like this conference where there's this giant exhibit hall and there's 50 vendors and then there's one track of talks and, you get 6 people in the room because everybody else is just hanging out, being schmoozed by vendors. That's not what it sort of wanted. It was more akin to what I experienced down in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, is a conference called You Shot the Sheriff. That's down there. And it was very casual, held at a bar, sort of a top secret location. So I sort of borrowed that from Luis, sort of the template basically of what I thought, a conference could be in Chicago. It sort of fit, similar city vibe, right? Sao Paulo, Chicago it's sort of similar in that regard. So thought it could work well here in Chicago as well. And thought, okay, well, what should we do with, how would it be organized? What should it be called? And sort of just started going down that path. And then chatted with Saki and a handful of other folks in Chicago and said, hey, let's do this. So that's where it sort of all started, was back in 2009. And I don't actually remember, like, I know Jonathan and I got connected up through just sort of the local, hacker scene in Chicago, I think, at that point.
Yeah. I mean, the scene in Chicago was just so ripe for, we were so itching for something. And yeah, once we got together, I mean, that's why we even had at Joe's Bar. I mean, that was Thotcon 1. It was so perfect because the venue was it was so raw. And I think that was why everybody really enjoyed it as so much. I mean, it really kicked off. I mean, we packed that place. That place loved us so much.
Did it meet your expectation, or was it completely like shattered as soon as it started? Things just kind of were fly by the seat of your pants.
I would say we had something pretty special, at that first one. It just, like, the venue, the lighting, the screens, like all of that sort of clicked with what we were going for from a theme perspective. And then the population of people that came were the same folks that attended like 2600 locally every month, that attended like DC 312 every month, that attended the ShySec conferences, not conferences, but meetups. And so, like, just drawing from that group of people, I think we had like, 130 people, and it was almost like no advertising. I think I posted, the only advertising I did, I think I posted it to full disclosure when, like, the call for papers. You might be able to find, like, in the archives of full disclosure, my first email out there. But that's what we did, sort of like this call for papers, and then advertised it. And then we got some really awesome people to present talks and speak, and it was a good time. I think everybody had a really great time. And then we just decided to do it once more, and it grew just a little bit. And then I think that's when it sort of started taking off. Like, the demand for, like, the space and the tickets and the people sort of we always capped it, but it's always sort of outpaced what we're looking for. And today it's even the same, right? We'll sell tickets out. I think we sold out tickets for this one that we've postponed for, it feels like forever. We sold out this one on October 1st, 2019, in like something like 12 hours or something like that. Like, all the tickets were gone. And we still haven't had the event, right? It's sort of, the event's going to be in October of this year. So it's going to be almost 2 years. It's going to be longer than 2 years after we sold the tickets is when we're having the event this time. But they sold out. The demand for it was crazy. Sold out like almost immediately.
Oh yeah. So many people still ask me that, like, hey, do you have any more tickets? I'm like, nope, sorry.
What we learned is that at our events, things got a little raw, and not as, like, buttoned up and professional as, like, most of the other conferences. I would say even like DEF CON, right, at that time, right? Because DEF CON, you're on stage in front of, like, 3,000 people. There's cameras everywhere. There's reporters. Things are a little more reserved. And we found our events, the speakers, even though these were the same speakers that were speaking at places like DEF CON and Black Hat and RSA, and in big conferences that were speaking at our events, they enjoyed, letting loose a little bit, and going a little deeper, telling backstories about certain things. And so we made a decision, I think, after Thotcon 2, like, no more recordings at all. And we haven't. So there is no like video record of, like, hundreds of talks, right? Like, actually more than that, like maybe 1,000 talks now. There's no video record of them. They don't exist. And the whole idea is you had to be there, you had to be at the event. And that was it.
Before we get to the visual elements that I do want to talk about, because they're really cool, we have to talk about the name, right? Because I think for those of you listening, for the listeners of the podcast, might think that Thotcon is spelled THOUGHT, but actually it's spelled THOT, which in popular vernacular, popular lingo, might mean something else. What's the origin? Of course, this predates any of that. What's the origin of the name Thotcon?
Yeah. Well, it means that hacker over there. No, I'm just kidding. So we predate any of that vernacular that exists today. It basically was me with a United Airlines napkin, just like jotting down names of a potential conference. And I sort of, I knew ChicagoCon had sort of existed, sort of wanted to get away from that. I think I had like ShyCon or something like that was some ideas, but there was ShySac, and I didn't want to like conflict with that. And then original idea was just the numbers 312Con. And I thought, that's sort of generic too. Like, I don't know. It doesn't have like it doesn't feel like a brand. It doesn't feel like something you'd want to, continue to go to for years. And so I was writing down like the words 312 on a piece of paper, and then underlined the TH, and then the O from one, and then the T from the two. And I got Thought, and I put ThoughtCon together. And thought that it sounded great, right? Because it's sort of, you could say ThoughtCon and it sounds like thinking and ideas and a conference, but then it's not spelled that way, right? It's spelled different, and that's where it really came from. And the first thing I did when I got off that flight back from DEF CON is I was in the back of the cab, like on Network Solutions, like trying to see if that domain was available, and sure enough, like .org, .com, and .net were all available. So I just bought all three right there, and which is kind of odd, right? Like for that time period, for a 7-character domain name, like you'd think someone would have randomly sucked that one up and been squatting on it by then, but they weren't. So miraculously, we grabbed it and were able to start building a website around it and doing all these things. So
something funny about all of that is, I think it was really like ThoughtCon 4. It had to be, because it was like right after we moved to the new venue. We had the after party at this venue, and we had a couple of couples show up really, really dressed up that were obviously not part of the ThoughtCon crowd. And we're like, hey, what's going on? What are you here for? They're like, we're here for the ThoughtCon party. I'm like, oh, well, you're welcome to stay. But they looked around and they saw all these people and thought,
they were dressed to the nines, like dresses and like very flashy tuxedos, right? It was like this whole like get up. It was like pretty incredible. I was like, that was the first time I actually thought that there was anything else that was named that. And I still didn't really quite get it. After that time, it was like, I think it was ThoughtCon 4, right? It was like ThoughtCon 4. And like, that was it. And then like it never crossed my radar after that, probably until like maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah. 6 or 7.
So when I think of ThoughtCon, I mean, sort of shifting gears, but also still in line with the whole abandoned warehouse. When I think of ThoughtCon, I think about the style, the experience, the visual style. When you go to sign up for ThoughtCon, it's all text-based. It's ASCII. There's no visual. There's no GIFs, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it still is.
And the whole feel of it is very, very underground, to the point where you would not reveal the location. Even if it was the same location, you wouldn't reveal it.
Yeah, we don't. We never publish the location. It's never been published by us online, ever. It's never on the ticketing site, never on the website. Yeah, that was part of the idea.
So there's a real like HackerCon vibe, to use the term liberally. Where did it all come from? And what's it like to keep this going, to keep it up?
I mean, the idea that I had even like early on, I mean, like if you look back, you can look at our archives and you can see what the first ThoughtCon website looked like, and it looked very similar to what it looks like today. Now we've like expanded the view, right? Like I think it's like it was like 40 column, like Commodore 64 40 column, kind of like just fit into a screen kind of thing, as with the first website. But the idea was really just bare bones kind of look and feel. We wove in even from the first one. It was very like, and we also wove in like Chinese and Russian, even into the first one. Like there was always like Chinese or Russian text. And the whole idea was like this like backstory, right? Putting this backstory around the conference that really never existed was like the backstory I sort of mentally wrote was, this is some underground hacker conference, international, where people from all over the world show up. And it's like, there's Russian hackers that come possibly, right? There's Chinese hackers that come possibly. And there's folks from the US that are there as well. That was sort of the implied backstory to it. And sort of put that into the look and feel, into design, even to the point where like, when you first came to the conference, the idea was that everybody got the same things, right? So it was just, like when you go to a conference, you're like, oh, I get I get this, I get a badge and that's it. Like what we did is, the first conference, you got a bag that had a t-shirt in it with your size. It had a program. It had, one sticker. It had one pencil. It had a pencil sharpener in there. And then all of this was packaged in this black envelope that had a sticker on it that was randomly in, it was like printed in Chinese or Russian or English sort of overlaid over it. And so that was the sort of like unboxing feel that the first one had. But the whole idea is just like, and it's been the same. We haven't changed that since forever, right? Like that's the same sort of thing that we carry over and the same components are in there. And I think people really look forward to that. Just to put things in perspective, by the way, how many people are attending this next one? Looks like about 1,800. Looks like we'll have about 1,800. Yeah. I think we sold like about 1,700 tickets, or total tickets were issued. And then you include the speakers and you include the oppers. And so I mentioned oppers earlier. So oppers are volunteers at the event.
If you're a defender fighting to protect your organization from cyber attackers, you must be successful ending attacks every single time. They only need to be successful once. Cyber Reason reverses the attacker's advantage. Our future-ready attack platform gives defenders the wisdom to uncover, understand, and piece together multiple threats, and the precision focus to end cyber attacks instantly. Cyber Reason ends cyber attacks from endpoints to everywhere.
One thing I think is really front and center is the puzzles. You guys mentioned that. But as soon as you open the program, there's puzzles. There's always strings. How did that come about? And they are some serious puzzles. How do you guys do that? How do you develop that?
Being curious, everybody always wants to learn. So you got to hide stuff and gives people something to look at. Gives you the ability to start hacking away. I mean, whether it's hiding some ciphers in there or just, hey, I want to go connect to this server and see what's on there. And that's been the whole intent of literally all of the puzzles is let's hide it in the program. That's always the way to start and learn something new. I mean, at least from my perspective, I want you to come out of there with something to say, hey, I've gotten better in some way, or there's something I didn't even know about. And the grading of how difficult the puzzles are is just based upon how far you want to go. So you kind of have to work together with some people that might not know it. I mean, I remember one of like just the cipher puzzles. It was like a 10-phase step that was literally in the badge. It was just on the top row. And I forget, that was probably one of the first years you attended there. And that basically went through every different language. And you finally got to the final answer. And it was like, hey, just try it. Something to do.
How many of these things? I mean, is this a kind of a rabbit hole for you? Do you brush up on your cryptology every Thotcon, trying to find new ways of?
You better believe it. I think the one thing you can say, and I think this will go the same thing for Nick, is it's incredibly more difficult to be a teacher or that leader because you have to be able to broaden your mindset over everything that's going on. So you have to know a lot in order to teach people, but you also have to know how to be within your theme of the year too. So you don't want to stray. You want to kind of keep people on a path. But I'm constantly coming up with puzzle concepts or different crypto puzzles that, one, are solvable and not like crazy obscure, but two, can somehow make somebody go, okay, I see the rational, I see the plan and how this is going to unfold itself.
So switching gears again, going back in time to the first few Thotcons. Were there any memorable moments in those few Thotcons, memorable talks or experiences that you guys remember?
Yeah, I don't. There's probably a few we shouldn't talk about, maybe.
We got to talk about one that's just at least really hysterical about the boxing match after the UFC fights.
Oh yeah. So
That's a good first
yeah,
one. That's PG-ish.
yeah, definitely. So I'll tell a little bit about it, and then maybe Jonathan, you might have more details in it. But I think it happened. Did it happen? It was only after it was after ThougHotcon 2, right?
It was after 2.
Yeah. So we had at this bar called Joe's Bar in Chicago that is still around. That had sort of evolved. I think it used to be like a sports bar, but then it sort of evolved into like a country bar. And then also would have like these obscure, like other kind of events that they would host in there. Because it was a unique space. It was literally like a large room, lots of televisions all over the place, floor painted black, ceiling painted black. It was like, it was like almost like this sort of like a theater kind of feel to it, but it was a bar as well. Like it was it was a bar, like a sports bar kind of feel. And they told us going into it that we needed to be done by like a certain time. It might've been like 6:00. Like we only had it for one day. This is when the event was only one day. It was on a Friday, one day, and that's it. It was not 2 days. And they told us we needed to be done because they needed to set up for an event that evening. And I don't think they told us what the event was. I'm pretty sure. And so like right at like, cause we had to be done at 6, but like right at like 5:40 or maybe 5:30, these people started bringing in like chain link fences, right? Yeah. And like stage material, like sort of like risers and like all this kind of stuff. They started bringing it in and like just sort of like putting it in like the doorway, like getting into like where we are. And it was just sort of, okay, we're closing up, we're talking about stuff. And then we had this VIP area that we had that was upstairs that overlooked the stage area. And people were up there finishing up their drinks. And all of a sudden, like all of these girls in like different costumes started showing up. Like, wasn't it like Snow White? There was like all these different costumes and they started showing up. And basically this was like this like women's wrestling cage match kind of thing that was going to happen at the venue after we were done. And I think there might've been like guys as well that were going to fight, but it was this whole like real crazy thing. It was like amateur cage match fighting. And they were, while we were cleaning up, they were like just pushing the chairs away and like setting up these like caged walls for like the stage that was going to go in the middle of the room. It was pretty crazy.
Oh yeah. Everybody was asking us like, is this what happens after ThoughtCon every year? Like, is this the next part? Is this the after party?
Is this the after party? Yeah.
Nobody knew. Oh man.
It was like, we had no idea what was going on. People were asking us and we were like really confused about like why there was like this cage match that was forming. And they're like, oh yeah, that's what we scheduled after your event. And so then I think after that, we were like the next year, we moved venues, but we were like, there cannot be an event after our event. Like we need to be able to book the whole venue for the whole day. No events afterwards. And so what we ended up doing, I think in ThoughtCon 3, maybe even ThoughtCon 4, maybe 5 as well. I don't know. We had like our after party at the venue. The venue was big enough that we were able to convert the whole venue into an after party. So we didn't run into that situation.
At our very first year, we even had some guy starting to DDoS, or no, it wasn't even DDoS the network. He was just trying to hack the whole network. And we're looking around trying to find this dude. Like everybody's complaining, like, what's going on? Why is the internet down? And we barely had like internet at that first conference anyway. That was a hard pull. And we ended up looking around with security guys, like, where is this dude? Where's this dude? Trying to figure out what's going on. And he's sitting at the table at this, I don't even know, it was like the high boy by the bar. We're like, that was like the first major security event we had at ThoughtCon 1. We're like, what the heck? Why is this one guy doing this? Like, the guy, he had like no good reason to. He's like, I thought this was a hacker con. I thought this was all cool. Oh man, those are ridiculous. But that also, after that whole day, that's what ended up starting the after party when we were going to Neo.
Maybe for some of the people who are listening, maybe you could explain what Neo is.
Oh man, you're right. This is a fun one. So if anybody, well, everybody should be familiar with the Matrix. The Wachowski sisters attended the Neo nightclub for years. I mean, it was a staple of Chicago scene. And the club, if you really want to get a feel for it, is when you first watch the Matrix. When he says when they say follow the white rabbit, and you go into that club, that feeling right there is literally what Neo, that club was. It was underground down a back alley. You would not have known it was there. It's in like middle of a street that you're just like, oh, hey, it's all nice retail stuff. But you go down this alley and you walk in there and you're like, wait, this is where we are. What's going on? And it's if anything could be more like industrial cyberpunk feeling, this is exactly what it was. It goes back to all of our youth, and which is why we were so excited about it. But it just became like this after party where everybody could just be completely free and enjoy industrial music, enjoy like EBM, EDM, and that's actually the same feeling that we've been going for throughout Thotcon. I mean, I kind of weave some of that into like the programs and stuff, but that's always been us. So if you haven't attended, definitely recommend it, but it's also kind of it might not be for everybody, but who cares? I mean, it's something that's a lot of fun. But we still since Neo has closed, which is now, I think it's like children's daycare,
which is pretty crazy. Yeah, like taking your kids to there, and I'm sure they had they had to really clean that place up. But imagine like people unknowingly in Lincoln Park in Chicago, like, hey, there's this new great daycare. They have no idea that they're taking their kids to what used to be, Neo.
Oh yeah. So what we ended up doing now is every year now we find a venue and we remake a Neo night, even with the same old DJs and everything, and have a lot of the same old attendees that come. And this includes like the scene formerly from Chicago that used to attend Neo too. So it becomes like all around a really, really great night.
I kind of wanted to end on a future looking note. I was thinking about asking you guys, what do you think is the impact that you've made on the community around you? And what are you looking forward to?
The one thing that I get the most out of Thotcon are the people that I've met and then reconnected with over the course of the year, or many years that we've been running it. So there's countless numbers of people that I've met or seen at like one of the early Thotcons or even just different Thotcons over the years who have like met up with me or like walked up to me at other events who have said things like, hey, my first hacker conference ever was Thotcon. And the first time I ever went to a hacker conference, and now I'm speaking at DEF CON this week, right? Or they've said things like, I was a Windows administrator at a bank in Chicago, and was really interested in security, but really couldn't get into security in my bank. Like it was sort of like this wall that I couldn't get past. So I decided to take it upon myself, and I bought tickets to Thotcon. I attended a bunch of talks. I met a bunch of people, and now I'm in security at this other organization because of the things that I learned or the people I connected with. And so that's where I think where the biggest impact. It's really given people opportunities or created opportunities for people in the Chicago community, but also in the global community who have come and attended. When you just run a conference for like maybe 1 or 2 years and end it, you don't really get to see that impact. But since this has been around for a decade, there are people who started coming to Thotcon when they were like 17 years old who are now almost 30, right? So they're now getting into like the mid-career, and they can tell us like how they got into the community, got into the industry, and are now doing great things, which is really, really exciting and awesome to see.
What's so cool about Thotcon, which I never really would have thought possible, but other than it just being like a localized Chicago conference, which is originally our core goal, it kind of became international. That like I've been to Taiwan and I've been to HitCon, and they're like, oh yeah, you work at Thotcon? I'm like, yeah, like, how do you know who I am? I'm in Taiwan. They're like, oh, I've been there. I know people that went there. I'm like, you're on the other side of the world. How do you even know about this? But it's really wild to just see how the influence spreads about the community and just seeing people grow and keeping that cultivated. Because I've met many people now that are just so excited about just not only growing and learning something new, but bringing others into the community. And this is why we keep it as raw, why we keep it as like old school as possible, is because everybody really resonates with that is in the hacker community. And with that, like, keeping that community going is probably my favorite thing about it, because it's something that I love the nostalgia of it, but so does everybody else. So it kind of keeps us all really tied together.
Really appreciate you guys. This was a really fun conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
CK Music.